we could spend a whole weekend on this topic of communicating with believing family and friends. A lot of what we're going to say you probably have heard in some of the podcasts you may have listened to. And I don't like the energy of having to rush through something and giving it short shrift. And I really like the processing that we've done all weekend. So it's a very different feeling these last couple presentations. But also I know you really value, the content as well. So we've just decided we're going to just throw a couple ideas at you, but we're going to return to this topic and give it its full justice as well.
Don't we want to go around and have them all?
And I want to have what we really like is a conclusion where you guys each have at least a minute to share something you valued or something an aha moment you had or something you're going to do differently.
It's the best part.
And that's
it really is.
Really important. So I'm going to just try and do like 5 or 7 minutes. You can jump in, and then we're just acknowledging we're going to not do this topic justice. Is that okay? Yeah. So the best thing that I can start with about navigating your relationships with believing family and friends is a slide that isn't there. So So you remember all that emotional intimacy stuff that we just talked about? Now I want you to take this slide, but think about it with your believing family and friends. For example, if you're angry and if you haven't processed your own faith crisis, it's going to be hard for you to communicate effectively with your believing family and friends because you're going to bring all that invective and anger to the relationship. So part of it is you getting healthy first, or you're going to just do damage with those you love. So values.
It's always fun to be like.
Wait, use your microphone.
It's always fun to be like.
Yeah.
And please connect with me.
Yeah. So values. A really powerful thing you can do with your believing family is take the church discussion out of it and have an explicit conversation about values, which is, regardless of where you are or I am with belief for the church, can we just get in sync about our values? Do we both value our relationship? Do we both value kindness? Do we both value respect? Do we both value free agency? Do we both value unconditional love? Well, if so, what if we built our relationship on that instead of focusing on our religious differences? And what would it be like if we could just focus our relationship on the things we agree upon instead of their differences, right? Do you offer unconditional love to your believing family and friends, or are you trying to change them? Are you simultaneously wanting them to accept you, but then you're intolerant of their maintenance of their belief and their affiliation with the church? Does it make sense, right? Are you vulnerable with them? So instead of saying Fanny Alger, Kinderhook plates, peepstones, are you like, I feel hurt. I feel sad. I'm really hurting right now. And are you leading in your relationship with believing family and friends, not with things that are going to make them angry and triggered and defensive, but with your vulnerability? Sometimes we forget that. We're so angry and we're so trying to change them that we don't stop to begin with remembering that anger is a secondary emotion. Behind the anger is always either sadness or fear or loneliness. And you're going to be much more effective communicating with your believing family and friends if you come from a place of sadness and vulnerability and expressing your fears than you are from your anger or your attacking. And that's where vulnerability, see how we're just applying this paradigm to how you think about those relationships. Listening, understanding, and empathizing. What if you do that with them? And what if you say, how has this been for you for me to have a faith crisis? And being willing to hold their pain and have them explain to you why it's been so difficult.
Can you say, what I hear you saying is, as I've lost my faith and belief, is I've not gone to church. That's been incredibly hard for you. You feel embarrassed, or you feel sad.
You feel like you've been a bad mom, or you've been a bad dad, or you've been a bad spouse, right? Do we offer the validation and the understanding that we seek? Do you find ways to spend quality time outside of religious contentious religious conversations? Have you gotten to the point where you defend their belief and their faith to model what type of respect you want to receive from them? And are you differentiated from them, or are you secretly wanting to change them? See, do you value the fact that what faith does to help them be a good person? Some people, their faith makes them a better person. And can you value that? Or do you think like they have to be like you for you to have a relationship with them, right? So do you value differentiation, and can you model that? And then can you enforce healthy boundaries to teach them how to enforce healthy boundaries as well? So all I'm saying is this is a great guide to communicating with believing family and friends as a starting point. This concept of the righteous mind it's a great book. Jonathan Haidt, I recommend this book. Write that down if you want. Haidt. The basic concept that everyone just needs to remember is that religious conversion is an emotional and a social experience. Because how many of you have thought, how can Richard Bushman possibly still believe in Mormonism? How many of you had that thought? How can really smart, my husband's a doctor and he still believes that the church is true. How in the world is that possible that an intelligent human who knows all this stuff, or who's a thinking person, how can they still believe? What that displays is a fundamental misunderstanding about how belief works. Belief is an emotional conversion and a social conversion. It is almost never an intellectual one. And you can't deconvert someone from a position intellectually that they arrived at emotionally and socially. Do you understand? So again, we think, pepper them with doubts and with the CES letter and podcasts will jostle them from their faith. But in reality, they're not believing because of the intellectual stuff. They're believing because ultimately it makes them feel good. It brings them joy, or they feel like it's a good thing. And the rider and the elephant is just simply this, that your emotional brain is as big and as strong as an elephant. Your logical brain most oftentimes is as puny as and insignificant as a human on top of the elephant. And if there's ever a difference between where the human wants to go and where the elephant wants to go, who wins?
The elephant.
Who wins when the two want to go in different directions? Every single time.
And I'm sorry.
No.
And the big fallacy here is that we think we came to our conclusions logically.
And
So we are the same. We came to our conclusions emotionally.
That's right. And so you could name the CES letter, you could name some historical tidbit or whatever. The truth is, if we really got to your loss of faith, there was likely some very strong emotional underpinning, whether it's love for a gay kid or a feminist awakening or some type of abuse you experienced or feeling betrayed by the church or deceived, that led to your deconversion. So you just have to stop treating your believing family and friends like the intellect and logic and evidence and facts have anything to do with their experience. Because maybe that was important to you, but for those who are still in, it's primarily emotionally and socially rooted. And so you won't get to them by logic or evidence or reason most of the time. And not only that, you've heard me talk about the backfire effect. In reality, if you watch the podcast You're Not So Smart or listen to that where they talk about the backfire effect, there's scientific evidence to suggest that when you present someone with information that challenges their identity in a fundamental way, and the evidence is actually factual, whether it's gun control or global warming or abortion or religion, when I give you evidence that shows your position is wrong, guess what happens to your position?
Gets stronger.
It gets stronger. You hold tighter to your position when confronted with evidence that proves your position to be wrong. And so why would you ever want to actually strengthen their resolve and belief and commitment in that position? So don't do it. Your job in a relationship with the believer is to make them feel safe, not to make them feel threatened, right? It's to use this reverse psychology, which is to say something to the effect of, I love you, you're amazing, I value our relationship. Here's the sandwich again, right? I love what you've taught me, or I love the church, I love so many things about blah, 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 something very positive, something very simple like, I just want to let you know my relationship with the church has changed. That's all you have to say. And then I want you to know that I'm never going to try and take your faith away. I'm never going to talk to you about any of this information. I'm never going to try and sow seeds of doubt. I'm never going to try and convince our kids or your kids to doubt. I will never bring any of this up with you. Even if you ask me why I lost my faith, I probably won't tell you. And if you beg me and beg me and beg me, I may refer you to some resources for you to read on your own. But what I want you to know is I respect your beliefs so much that you can trust that I will never do anything to disrupt them. That should be your letter, right? If you give a letter at all. And what that's going to do, at worst, it's going to make them feel like you're safe and not a threat. And a tiny bit insidiously, at best, it's going to make them curious. Because when I say, here's the information, what is your reaction as a believer? Physically, what's your reaction? Here it is. Here it is. What's your reaction? This, right? But when you say, hey, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to ever share it with you. I'm going to keep this to myself, and you can't know. I don't want you to know, and I'm not going to share it. What's your psychological reaction? Respect. It's like, don't go in the closet? Don't think of the pink elephant? No, I actually ethically don't believe in screwing with people's faith, so I'm not suggesting that you try and play games with people like that, but I'm just saying you just told me that's the psychological reaction. A withdrawal and a protection leads to curiosity, whereas forcing something leads to the backfire effect. So,
and since our value is relationship anyway, it's not about manipulation. It's really about, what you're hoping to get from this approach more than anything is relationship. And that should be your only expectation. If you get some of that curiosity as a byproduct, that's just like icing on the cake, but it shouldn't be your intent necessarily. Yeah.
So one way to say this is don't become the monster you ran from. We may leave the church because we think it's authoritative and dictatorial and conditional love, and then we turn around and show the same thing to our believing family and friends. We try and control them. We show them conditional love. We try and manipulate them and make them feel lesser than, and we're no better. So another way to say that is to demonstrate to them, model for them the respect that you seek. Does that make sense? Teach them how you want them to treat you. What is it you want? You want respect. You want kindness. You want support. You want unconditional love. Well, then show that to them by not trying to make them feel lesser than, not trying to control them, not trying to change their beliefs, but by just loving them unconditionally, making them feel safe, and maybe they'll learn to show you the same respect in return.
Probably one of the hardest things to give that we want desperately is the possibility that they might be open to the idea that we are right. And when you think about that on the backside, most of us are not really in a position to want to think that our believing people are right. So how can we expect to receive something we're not willing to give?
I think just really quickly, it is really arrogant to think that we've arrived at the truth. There are some people that just are different than us, and they're happier being believing and being religious, or they want it or they need it. And sometimes we think, whether it's with our own children or our spouse, or that like there's nothing worse than remaining in the Mormon church. And we talked about this at the beginning, and it was triggering for some of you. But as much harm as can be caused within a Mormon context, there are worse things. Having nothing is something that worse. There are more abusive systems. There are people that leave Mormonism and go to even more abusive systems. And so sometimes our fear is overestimated. And most importantly, you can rip someone out of a religious tradition and strip their faith away, and their lives can get worse. And are you really as arrogant to think that you know what's best for somebody else? Are you sure that if you strip their faith away, they're a happier, healthy person? Maybe that's true for you. Are you sure it's true for them? Are you sure? And so is there another alternative, which is they know themselves best? And if they're clinging to this, or if they choose this, or if they desire this, what if that actually is what's best for them right now? And what if it's their journey and it's not your job to try and decide that for them? Does that make sense?
And even if there's a fragment of harm in that you feel is true per se, like we've talked about so often this whole weekend, is that harm and pain are many times the avenues towards growth and opportunity. And we've come at that many times on our own accord. And so to force that on other people is just not respecting their developmental journeys.
Coming from the conscious parenting conversation we just had, in regard to parent-child, connection is better than control. If you have any power or influence with believing family and friends, it's when you have a connection, an emotional connection. So just remember that should be your goal, is staying connected with them. And that's the only way you're going to have influence. As soon as they feel defensive or scared, you've lost any potential influence you have. So if you ever want to have an influence, you, again, make them feel safe, make them feel safe, make them feel safe. So I think those are the main things I have. Natasha, do you want to add anything?
I would just add that kind of what Carolyn Pearson, so it was nice to end with her thoughts, the prophetess, is that, when she talked to a lot of members in the gay community, she said you're not going to be able to convince people that you have light. They're only going to be able to see your light. And in many ways, we talk about this as Mormons too, right? Like, show your light to the world so that people are attracted to what we have to offer. I don't say this if you do this from a duty perspective and an inauthentic perspective, then it fails. And that's why the light metaphor can be problematic, and guilt and shaming. And then we have fake light, right, that we're trying to put out there. But I'm really talking about really seeing people through, like showing them your authenticity. And that doesn't always mean happy, happy, happy. I don't think light is happy. If you've seen us role model anything, I hope you've seen some of our pain. I hope you've seen some of our weaknesses throughout this weekend. To me, that is shining my light. I don't have to be perfect to give you my light, but hopefully you're attracted to what I can offer in that regard.
Yeah, and ultimately, you don't want the burden of like having to be perfect because you don't want to fulfill the post-Mormon stereotype. Like, I don't want to put that burden on any of you, but really, just like with parenting, the strongest witness is the joy that you show and that you have and that you live. And there's nothing more confusing to a believer than to see healthy, happy post-Mormons who are, thriving. And that's kind of why we chose the term thrive. Let's just thrive. And that's best for us, and it's probably the best testimony of whatever truth we think we've found, is if we're angry and bitter and negative all the time and controlling, that's not appealing. But if we're healthy and happy and building this beautiful life and find healthy partnerships and our kids are doing better, of course there's always going to be pain and suffering in both places. That's why we talked about Buddhism and acceptance. We don't need to be perfect, but the extent to which we can just live a healthy, happy life, that's going to be best for you, and it's going to be the best testimony of whatever your beliefs are for anyone who might be interested. Does that make sense? It's the most compelling of all witnesses. It's what makes so many people want to be Mormon. How many converts are just like, my family sucked, that family looks happy, the Osmonds look happy, I'm going to join the Mormon Church because I want a family like that. And at some point we have to, as post-Mormons, do our best to be healthy and happy, not in a fake way, but in an authentic way. And that will be the best witness or testimony or the most convincing argument maybe of all. So that's our short version of this conversation.
Hey everybody, this is Wayne Sermon from Imagine Dragons, and I would love for all of you to join me for the first annual Thrive Day, where we can heal, grow, and build community together.
I'm Amber Scora, author of Leaving the Witness. Join me at the first annual Thrive Day, where we can grow, learn, and build community together.
Hi, I'm Natasha Helfer Parker. I am so excited to be part of the Thrive event that is coming up. I hope that you'll join me. It's going to be the first annual Thrive Day, and I want us to be able to heal and grow and build community together.
Hi, I'm John DeLynn. Please join me for the first annual Thrive Day. Never before will have so many thousands of post-Mormons been assembled, purely focused on the idea of healing and growth and building community. It's going to be positive and uplifting and an exciting day.